It's no secret that bosses will always be around to test your skill in video games. Anything that isn't an online sports game has them, and even then, some of those still have them if you set your AI high enough. When your supposed test is a bad experience, that's when the problems arise. Now, these aren't just fights I couldn't beat because I couldn't get good, though some will be on here for a similar reason. These are the fights that were poorly designed in ways that break the pace of the game and in some cases have no overall bearing on the rest of the game in general. Hence making you wonder why they went and put it in the first place. These are the absolute worst boss battles I've faced.
You know it's a good list when number 10 is a whole ass tie. So, Pokemon has been having a downward spiral for many years at this point, and it especially shows with their decline in the quality of each main release. Biggest issue a lot of fans have with the newer games is their difficulty, or rather, their lack thereof. And the start of this was Pokemon X and Y. Now, don't get me wrong, the overall quality of the games aren't as bad as, like, Scarlet and Violet, and in fact, some of my favorite features debuted in these games, like clothing customization and the fairy type. But for every good, there's also a bad. And in this case, it's 4 of them. Your rivals are some of the easiest fights in the whole series, and it shows that they didn't even try with their teams. I mean, come on, how many fights do we have until we finally get a rival team that doesn't have any open move slots? Even your supposed competent rival, who's just the MC as the opposite sex, has a starter with only 2 or 3 moves throughout most, if not the whole game. Did they just not like how hard Gen 5 was by comparison and decide to tone it down? Now, being completely fair, a self-imposed challenge can make these fights harder, but that's the thing. We shouldn't need to do that in order to have a fun challenge. I couldn't get attached to these characters because of how little we actually see them in-game, and their teams were so bad that I don't even remember what they specifically had. Only that their movesets were absolutely trash. Then again, it's not like these characters had much personality to begin with. Mad World is one of the best games to come out for the Wii. With an art style that's literally black and white and red all over, along with surprisingly good story and the vocal talent of Steve Bloom, John DiMaggio, and Greg Proops. They went a very long way with this game, but even then, there's still some problems. Primary example for this one? The boss fight against the Shamans. After coming out of the amazing Asian town levels and the fight against the Yokozuna, we then head to the horror-themed area of the game, and it's alright, I guess. It's not the best level of the game, but it isn't bad. No, the real pain is from the mini-boss who bears a striking resemblance to a previous boss and can just insta-kill you, along with the end of the first level's boss. The shaman spends most of the fight throwing minions at you while trying to hide like a coward. Honestly, not egregious, but just annoying. But on the off chance that you finally enter a power struggle with this guy, there's a chance that even if you move the controller correctly, it still won't register. Considering how this game is one that implements QTEs into the combat, you would think they would have checked to make sure it works properly. Oh, and let's not forget that stupid ass werewolf wheel that can still hit you even if you aren't actually near it. Gotta love those hitboxes. It's been said before, but I'll say it here too. The shamans did to werewolves what Twilight did to vampires. By that I mean, this boss is horrible. A game with high energy is one that will make the best boss battles with unique mechanics. One such game is No Straight Roads. The way this game does boss fights is really cool because of the way combat works in the game. The enemies all move to the beat of whatever music is in the background, and some shots are even parryable if you time it to the music width as well. Really cool concept, and for the most part, it works. For the most part. Those who have seen my top 7 No Straight Roads bosses know exactly where I'm going with this one. The robot boy band 1010 is not like this. Well, sorta is, but not really. Most of the fight is just waiting for the bosses to shoot something parryable or to drop their shields to hit them until you destroy one of them and they drop music notes, which means a lot of standing around and waiting and waiting. Throughout most of the fight, you'll get maybe 3 or 4 good hits in before they finally put their shields up again or move out of reach for another extended period of time. Even on higher difficulties, there's no real difference as your main method of damage to them is either parrying their shots back at them or just getting up close and personal when they finally let their shields down. I talk more about this one in my other video, but all in all, this fight was just a huge slog compared to others in the game. Okami is a game that I'm surprised wasn't more popular. The overall presentation was really gorgeous, the brush mechanic was actually pretty tight and mostly responsive, and the story was one of the best I'd seen for a game based on ancient Japanese legends. However, this game suffers from something that a lot of others do: repeat bosses. And the end game is especially infamous for its boss gauntlet in the Arc of Yamato. The absolute worst among these is one that you have to fight the most: Orochi. This snake is the worst fight of the game for several reasons. Number 1, the fight takes too long. First phase is trying to counter 3 of the 8 heads and get them drunk on 8 purification sake to make the boss pass out so you can attack the bell. Destroy that, and then he goes to phase 2. Now you need to repeat the process, but with all 8 heads. This brings us to reason number 2. Sometimes, the brush controls don't respond properly to certain movements, so your input might not be read when you need it most. I know I just praised the brush controls, but the Wii version especially had problems reading circles, and those QTEs at the end of the fight don't always respond right either. And that's just a straight line! And finally, we reach reason number 3, and the biggest reason why this fight is on the list. You have to fight this prick 3 friggin' times! I wouldn't have minded it if it was only 2 times we got originally, but having to face him again in the final gauntlet is so annoying that it feels like they needed to just pad the game out for an extra 12 minutes. The only reason this fight isn't higher because there are other bosses that need to be fought multiple times thanks to the Arc of Yamato. And it's not like it's a game-breaking problem, but it's still bad enough to stand out in an otherwise good game. Metroid is a series that was in a funk for almost a decade because of mid-tier games. Those being Metroid Prime Hunters and more primarily Metroid Other M. While I haven't played Hunters, I have had several friends tell me I am not missing much. Other M, however, I have played, and because of that, I can get into a bit of why this game almost caused this series to die. Biggest reason for this was that it changed Samus as a character and retconned her origin story as well as the ending of Super Metroid. Throughout the game, we were told about how Samus was the odd one out on her team because she was a woman, and not because she was a literal teenager at 16. On top of this, throughout most of the cutscenes, she narrates about information we already know and acts like an idiot at some points thanks to that stupid authorization mechanic. Seriously, why would you tell her to go to the fucking lava area of the bottle ship without her Various suit? But the biggest middle finger was the end fight with the android MB. If the fight was literally anything else involving her ability as an android, or as the resurrected mother brain, I would have left it off the list. But no, it is the easiest boss on this list because you can win it completely by accident. In a few points in this game, you go into a first-person mode to search for a certain something, and that something can be as obtuse as green blood on green grass. Real creative direction there, devs. This is the whole of the fight with MB. It's another goddamn search segment. I'm not kidding. You literally only have to aim your gun at her in order to win. That's it. Those enemies coming at you, only there to block your vision so you don't point your gun toward her. Now, some people would question if I should even count this as a boss fight, but I'm operating on this logic. If it has an enemy that has some form of significance, either by story or mechanic, and requires you to push buttons to ward off enemies, it counts. It was so anticlimactic to get to this point only to suddenly get hit with end credits and post-game, I felt like I was gonna get whiplash, and we would not see another Metroid game after this until Metroid Dread from 2022. Having only played 4 of the Kingdom Hearts games, I can safely say I'm no expert. My overall playstyle is one that likes quick but powerful attacks that stun my enemies in a way that they can't react to. So when that playstyle is flipped onto me, I get annoyed very easily. Now, being completely honest, I held no joy when I was trying to play the super bosses for Kingdom Hearts. And in fact, I was kind of scared of a few. Despite how much I died, however, I enjoyed my fight against the mysterious figure and the data fights while challenging, whilst they still managed to shake up the characters while keeping their movesets mostly similar to their debut fights in Re Chain of Memories. But there is one fight that isn't even a super boss that held just as much difficulty and was among the biggest reason why I hated Birth by Sleep the most. Vanitas as a character seemed somewhat interesting, being born from darkness and yet looking exactly like our main boy Sora. But here's the main problem. Trying to fight him is like trying to fight Lingering Will at level 1. Possible, but stupidly hard for no reason. The only way you're able to stop him from comboing you to death is by spamming your own combos and abusing invincibility frames during shot locks. Not that it really helps since he still has a shitload of health, and his most annoying attack is where he goes underground to try and hit you from below multiple times, ending in a rain of flaming rocks. Hope you got that shield evolution. What stops him from being any higher, however, is the fact that I still eventually won in less time than the other bosses on this list. Took a lot of effort and way more cursing and desk pounding than I'm willing to be proud of, but I still did it. Cuphead is not your typical shooter or platformer. You run around in an environment reminiscent of old Disney or Looney Tunes cartoons and defeat massive bosses for their soul contracts, all with a very jazzy background big band orchestra. But this game is also very, very hard, and no fight summarizes this in the worst way quite like Grim Matchstick. What makes this absolute pussy of a dragon the hardest in the main game? Position and platform placement. You fight him in the sky and use clouds as platforms. Sounds simple, but the problem with this? The platforms are very small, and their placement is randomized, and they are constantly moving. Now, this wouldn't be so bad if the dragon himself didn't also have a bevy of annoying attacks. He could shoot eye lasers, slap you with his tail, and shoot out fireballs in rapid succession. Did I mention this is only phase 1? Phase 2 has him flip to the other side of the screen to open his mouth and let a fireball parade down his tongue, with some of them jumping at you just to make sure you're moving platforms. Get his HP down enough, and he becomes a Hydra that shoots fire bubbles and a literal flamethrower for phase 3. I couldn't really put this higher on the list because for as annoying as it is compared to the base game, it's not the only one like it. The DLC has bosses that are just as, if not more difficult as well. Plus, if you know what to watch out for, it's possible to beat it in 2.5 minutes. It's just finding the run that lets you do that that's a chore and can take literal hours to do. I'll be completely honest. Despite what I said during the Pokemon segment, I'm not someone that absolutely needs a challenge in order to have fun with the game. It's when you do give a challenge, it should be built up at a steady enough pace that it isn't irritating when you finally win. That being said, it shouldn't also come in just because the boss just so happens to be the last one of the game. And I would always hate Jasper Beck Jr. for that same reason! Let me set the scene for you here. The whole of No More Heroes 2 is built on Travis learning that despite his drive for revenge, and despite his job as an assassin, the people he's killing are still human, so revenge shouldn't be his main goal for reaching the top rank again. And he's finally arrived on that level during the best fight of the game, Alice. Then in comes Jasper Bat Jr. to shit all over his progress. The first phase isn't stupidly easy, but pretty pathetic for the most part due to his attacks being really easy to avoid and easy to manage. The real problem starts when his health suddenly stops depleting. What am I supposed to do here? Why isn't his health moving anymore? Turns out there is a required cutscene that has to play before the fight can continue, and the only way to trigger it is by losing a power struggle. Annoying, but whatever. So we beat the first phase and he suddenly has several syringes of something that suddenly makes him buff and turns him into, I guess, a supervillain. And here's where the difficulty takes a huge spike. He can suddenly hit you across the room, shoot laser bats from his eyes, teleport around the room, and once his health goes down far enough, Hurricane punch you out the window for an insta-kill. And the lower his health goes, the more he teleports, with that very same Hurricane punch. And the worst part? It's random what direction he'll be facing when he punches. So going out the window is a roll of the dice and a prayer to RNGesus that this isn't the run he points toward the window. And if you manage to survive that, it's still not over! Phase 3 has him growing gigantic and attacking from literally anywhere in the room, and you can only hit him when he's close to the window. And the camera in this phase is so bad that you literally cannot see where his attacks are coming from when you're up close and personal like that. Overall, this fight is one of the worst final bosses in gaming history because it shits all over the main character's development throughout the story, but also the fact that the difficulty spikes so much between phases that felt like an even bigger kick in the nuts because he's the final boss. There is nothing left after him. No post-game, no super boss, nothing. Just this fight, then credits. And we're only at number 3. Sonic 06 has been a punchline since its release. It's the game everyone talks about when it comes to rushed or unfinished games alongside Sonic Boom and literally everything a AAA company has released in the last few years. Because this game was so bad, everyone and their brother has talked to death about every single aspect that went wrong, especially when it comes to one particular fight. Silver the Hedgehog was the single worst fight of the game for a few reasons. Reason number 1, his voice is absolutely annoying.
Let's go!
This was his debut game, and it sounds like an even whinier and wimpier version of Trunks. This could be chalked up to bad voice direction and never got remedied. Reason number 2, bad camera. Sonic 06 is set up in a way so that no matter what, the camera is always on Sonic, even when locked onto a boss. Due to this, it's hard to see where Silver is when trying to dodge his attacks and look for his opening to attack. This will leave you stuck in reason number 3, the glitches. Combined with the crappy camera, it's not only possible, but extremely easy to get locked into a loop of taking unavoidable damage, depending on where he launches you if you aren't careful. And if that happens to be into a wall, you'll be stuck in an infinite loop of taking damage and recollecting one ring over and over until you rage quit! Reason this fight's only number 2 on the list, however, is because there is one good side to this story. There is a fan project currently trying to revamp the entirety of Sonic 06 into an actually decent game, including cut voice lines, reworking some levels, and even revamping the way some characters control. If you can, I highly recommend supporting Project 06. As for this, however, there's only one positive thing I can say about it. It's one of the best things to show a game design class as to why you don't rush a project for an early to release. Now you might be asking yourself, what could possibly be worse than Silver the frickin' Hedgehog? Number 1 is the pinnacle of tone deaf for its franchise. It took everything about a beloved character and ground it to bare bones basics with no appeal. Coming from a game that had all the time in the world to develop, it is downright shameful compared to its predecessors. What is it? Let's recap. Number 10, the X and Y rivals. Number 9, the Shamans. Number 8, Ten. Number 7, Orochi. Number 6, MB. Number 5, Vanitas. Number 4, Grim Matchstick. Number 3, Jasper Bat Dickbag. And number 2, Silver the Hedgehog. What's this? Another Alex Rochon quote? I mean, hey, it fits. Boss fights with Bowser tend to be either instant classics or instant punchlines. By that, I mean it could be an amazing finale like in Paper Mario, a stupidly easy fight like in Mario Sunshine, or whatever the fuck we got here. The amount of things wrong with Paper Mario Sticker Star is a rabbit hole all on its own, but I'll stick to the cliff notes here. Your attacks are also your items. You can only have so many of them, and the way they take up space determines whether or not you can actually bring enough supplies for the next fight. Not that you really need to worry about that, since you gain nothing but money from fighting basic-ass enemies. Bosses serve no purpose and are just damage sponges you only need to nuke with thing stickers. Bowser takes that and gives a big ol' paper metal claw. The final battle of Chapter 6 is a 5-phase confusing mess. Phase 1. Bowser brings out minions that essentially act as extra turns for him, and because of the way this game is programmed, you cannot target him until all the minions are gone. Did I mention those minions regenerate every turn? So what are you supposed to do? Apparently the answer was to tape or staple the doors shut. Meanwhile, Bowser sits in at 400 HP and does way too much damage with said minions. Phase 2 has Bowser heal back to full and stick a womp in front of him that will only take significant damage from the weakness on his back. A pair of scissors. Phase 3 has Bowser shooting fireballs at you, and those can be weakened by literally any cold-producing item, so the fan, shaved ice, or the refrigerator. Phase 4 just requires use of tail stickers, which were plentiful from the previous level, and the Chain Chomp gives them to you if you are out. One hit and he goes down into Phase 5. Now before I go into this final phase, I want to point something out. Nowhere, at any point in this game, was it ever indicated that these items were needed for the fight. Apparently they intended for you to continually beat your head against every single wall in this fight, just to go back to town, grab what you need, only to hit the next wall and wonder how the fuck you were supposed to remember that you needed these to begin with. This is a major problem with this game in general, but it's especially egregious here. However, the biggest kick to the throat was the final phase. Bowser becomes a giant and is so powerful, you're lucky to be able to do more than one damage to him at a time. How is this solved? The useless, underdeveloped tutorial system decides to sacrifice herself in order to power us up because we have to be on even ground. Or some bullshit like that. I don't know, I button mashed my way through this because I really hated Kirsty that much. To me, this was an attempt to make me feel things I didn't think this game deserved to let me feel. The final phase has good music, I'll give it that, but Kirsty's sacrifice was so out of nowhere. It felt like they forgot her story to justify it when putting the game together. There are multiple 3-hour-long videos explaining why this game, and especially this fight, is absolute trash, but as a fan of the first 3 Paper Mario series, this felt like a slap to the face. Especially because Bowser himself is never permitted to speak a single word, ever, in the entire game. If you haven't already, I highly recommend watching Chugga Conroy or the Red Man rip into this game. They do it so much better than I ever could. But I'll end it like this. The reason why this boss is the worst one I've faced isn't because it's stupidly hard or stupidly easy. It's because there is no strategy to this game or this fight other than shoving the other side with bigger numbers. Because this is a Bowser fight in the Paper Mario series. And this game in particular did him so dirty, not just by doing the first game's plot even worse, but by actively forbidding him from saying anything throughout the game. This was something I wanted as a Paper Mario fan, but the way they did this entire game felt like a giant middle finger to everything the previous games stood for and were. This isn't just some random boss from a low-budget indie game that barely anyone has heard of. This was something I cared about, and that's the reason why this fight is number 1. I'm Shun, and Sticker Star was a plague on the Paper Mario franchise, infecting the next 2 games and even the Mario and Luigi series. But hey, at least they tried to recapture the love we had with Thousand Year Doors remake.